Madam President, I rise today as a mother, as a grandmother, and a senator whose state has been touched far too many times by gun violence, including mass shootings. And I also want to reiterate my support for the people of Boston who are dealing with the aftermath of senseless, tragic, and cowardly violence. I think I need to put into context why I have for so long been an advocate of gun safety measures. In January 1989, a gunman stepped onto the grounds of Cleveland Elementary School in Stockton, California. He fired at least 106 bullets from an AK-47 rifle across the schoolyard. He killed 5 children, ages 6 to 9, and 1 teacher, and he injured 29 other students before fatally shooting himself. This horrific crime led California to enact an assault weapons ban. And of course, we know that assault weapons ban in California is still in place. And I so appreciate Senator Feinstein's leadership in trying to once again authorize at the federal level an assault weapons ban. Now, Californians still remember this tragedy in Stockton, just as the nation will always remember the victims of the horrific events of Friday, December 14th, 2012 at Sandy Hook Elementary School. Now, I flash forward to from 1989 and the Stockton tragedy to a law office in San Francisco in 1993, where a crazed gunman, and I remember his name, but I won't say it, with an assault weapon, killed 8 people and wounded 6. One of those people was a brave lawyer who threw his body over the body of his wife, sacrificing his own life to save hers. Now, that young man was one of my son's best friends, and I know personally how these horrific and senseless tragedies live on with the survivors, the parents, the spouses, the children, the families, and the friends. It changes their lives and it pierces their hearts forever. So I've told you a couple of stories about California, but let me say this. Let's look at what's happened across this nation since Sandy Hook. In the 120 days since Sandy Hook, more than 2,200 Americans have been killed by gun violence. Hardly any place was spared. Now, we know there are many, many firearms in America, 300 million firearms in the United States. If you were to divide that up, that'd be 1 gun per person. Of course, there are many people who just have many, many guns. Now, this is a 50% increase, the number of guns in circulation, since 1995, when there were, as I say, about half the number. When I go home and I speak about this, and I write about it, I say, there are 31,000 reasons why we need to pass sensible gun laws. Because 31,000, that's the number of people who die every year in America. That's 87 people every single day on average. And you look at this, 31,000 people dying every year from gun violence. And so how do you get a sense of what that is? And I think back to one of the reasons I got into politics in the first place was the war in Vietnam and trying to end it. First as an activist and then as actually an elected leader in my county. And I think about how many people died in the 10-year war of Vietnam, and it's a little bit more than 50,000 in the 10-year period, and it turned our country upside down. Upside down. I can tell you, I lived through it. Generation against generation. It was a very, very tough time in this nation. People lost faith in the country. It was tough. And yet we have 31,000 people killed every year in America, and it's something we all kind of just say, okay, that's terrible, but we don't do anything about it. But we are about to do something about it. That is very important, I think. And it may not be everything that I would want to do, given my history on this issue, but I will say, if we can move forward with sensible background checks, and I thank Senators Manchin and Toomey so much for their work on this, and we can do something about straw purchasers, and we can do something about making our schools safer, which I'm pleased to say I wrote the legislation that's in the underlying bill before us. If we can do a few of these things, it would be a big step forward. Do I want to see more done? Yes. Do I want to see the ban on assault weapons reinstated? I do. But I do feel we're at a point in time where we may be able to get something done that matters. Now, I think we ought to look at mass shootings in the last 30 years. First of all, 40% of mass shootings have occurred since 2006. So if you go back 30 years, you see 40% took place since 2006. According to the Washington Post, in 2012 alone, 175 people were killed or wounded from mass shootings. People who shouldn't get these weapons are getting these weapons. People with severe mental illness are getting these weapons. We know that. Today, we got to see in the Democratic caucus lunch a heroine, someone who was unbelievable, Gabby Giffords, struggle with each step, with every word. Why? What did she do? She held a town hall meeting so she could bring government to her people in the most personal of ways. And someone who's very sick got access to weapons, and the rest we know. And in the name of those who were lost, Gabby Giffords and her husband, Mark Kelly, have been just truth tellers. These people, Mark and Gabby, they're gun owners, proud gun owners. They're not coming from a different place. And yet they are standing for sensible gun laws. And I'm so grateful to them for dedicating their lives to this. And I'm so grateful to the parents of the children and all the victims of Sandy Hook for putting a human face on these numbers. 175, what does that mean? But if you saw the faces, you would know what it means. And sometimes the wounds, as we see with Gabby, are so hard to deal with. And we can make it harder for people who are criminals who have no right to have a gun. We can make it harder for them by making sure they have to undergo a background check. And today I learned from Mark Kelly, through the background checks that we already have, that's when people go to a regular retail store, we've stopped well over 1 million gun sales, well over. And yet we don't have that same system in place for gun shows or private sales. So Joe Manchin and Senator Toomey have been working together, and they have crafted a way to move toward a sensible background check. Yes, protecting family members who want to give one gun to the next, but they have preserved, I think, the most important part of their bill, which is to simply make a uniform standard for a gun sale wherever you purchase your gun. You know, some of the strongest proponents of this are people who run retail stores who go through the laborious situation, although it's pretty quick now, of doing a background check. And yet somebody can go across the street to a gun show and make a deal and never be asked. And they could be a criminal, they could be mentally unbalanced, they could be a terrorist, okay? And still get a gun. Now, I want to look at the issue of school shootings in America. The tragedy that took place at Sandy Hook is a tragedy that far too many of our nation's communities have faced in recent years. And we're going to look at a chart that will show that since the year of Columbine, 262 students, teachers, and others have been killed or wounded in K through 12 school shootings. People go to school, it's supposed to be a protected zone. Who thinks about this? And look at how many people since Columbine, and we swore we'd never allow that to happen again. It's happening. So we have to do more. I could tell you this is just K through 12, but if you look at America's colleges and universities in my own state, California Oakos University, in 2012, it's in Oakland, a former student returned to the campus, killed 7 people and injured 3. And we have these horrible, violent incidents in colleges and universities. Now, school shootings are on the rise in America. I'm telling you, I have the numbers to show it. Let's show. The decades. We go back 1979 to 1988. These are the number of incidents at schools, not the people killed, but the number of school shootings. There were 27. Now, are these just the K through 12? This doesn't include the universities. So K through 12, 79 to 88, 27 incidents. 89 to 98, 55. 99 to 2008, 66. This is a number we don't want to keep going up. And in so many of these cases, it could have been prevented. Not saying every case, but certainly in some cases. And if we were able to do something about the magazine capacity here, that would have a big impact on the numbers as well. So we are moving up, and that's not a good number. Now, the parents of the fallen children at Sandy Hook and my hometown, my home state, have joined countless other parents who have lost their children in violent assaults on our nation's schools and colleges. They have joined with parents of Colorado's Columbine High School, California's Santana High School, Minnesota's Red Lake Senior High School, West Nickel Mine School in Pennsylvania, Virginia Tech, and so many others. The shooting at Sandy Hook is another reminder that we have failed our children. I mean, I don't know how to put it another way. I'm so sad about it. This topic is so heavy in my heart because I know we can do some things to change it. And I believe we're on the brink of doing some things. Not enough in my view, but some things to change it. And I could tell you, Madam President, because you were there today, we had quite a caucus today. Our colleagues who stood up, who have seen these tragedies in their states, were beyond eloquent. Our colleagues who are trying to do something that, yes, may be politically difficult, they're showing courage. It's one of those moments when you say, I'm blessed to be here, and I can do something about this. And I think more and more of our colleagues are beginning to realize this as they meet with the parents and they meet with colleagues and they sit down one-on-one. We have to keep our children safe. Now, one of the pieces of legislation that is less controversial that are included in the base bill before us is the School and Campus Safety Enhancement Act that I authored with Senator Collins, Senator Warner, and Kirk to help secure our nation's schools. You know, for years we had the very successful Secure Our Schools program. And basically we build from that program and we make some changes to it that I think will make it better. What we say, excuse me for a moment. I want to explain this to you the way it would work. What we say is, if a local entity, and this could be a police department, it could be a school district, if they feel they want to secure their schools, they will have to put some funds on the line, about 50% of the funding, but we would supplement that funding by 50%. And we would help to pay for security-related improvements, capital improvements at the school plant. A lot of our schools are old. When they were built, no one thought 5 seconds about some of these issues. Classroom locks, lighting, fencing, reinforced doors, security assessments, training for students and teachers and administrators, coordination with local law enforcement, so many things that we can do, but we know that our school districts and our local police departments are stretched right now. So we want to help them pay for some of these things. Perimeter fencing, for example, and cameras. You could see someone coming onto the campus and take action to either alert your school officers who may be there or your local police department to prepare. Now, we have had a similar program in place since '02, but the authorization expired in '09. And in the past, 5,500 schools have received these funds, but the funds weren't even sufficient. 54% of the entities that applied for these grants were turned away. So we know this is a program that the schools like because they took advantage of it, but we ran out of funds. So we want to make sure we reauthorize this. In the past, programs like the one in the bill passed with a 307-to-1 vote in the House and the Senate 95-0. So what we do is we reauthorize this Safety in Schools program for 10 years. We increase the authorization to $40 million a year. We allow more flexibility. We don't say what you have to use it for. And by the way, you don't use it for more cops in schools. That's another issue. It's not in this particular piece. It's something I care about and want to work on. It is not in this bill. What is in this bill is making capital improvements to the facilities. It is not a one-size-fits-all. Some people don't need a fence or a camera or a door. We leave it up to the schools. Flexibility. And we also do something that Senator Warner really wanted to do. We create a Department of Justice and Department of Education task force to develop advisory school safety guidelines. We include language from Senator Grassley to ensure adequate grant accountability. So Senator Warner and Senator Kirk also wanted to create a National Center for Campus Public Safety, which will serve as a clearinghouse for education, training, and best practices. Here's the thing. Some of our campuses really know how to do this and others don't. So we want to make sure there's a central place you can find out the best practices. I was going to just go through in closing some of the ways these funds were actually used on the ground before this program expired. In Sulphur Spring, Texas, which is the school district's made up of 9 schools, they wanted to do a safety assessment. And they were able to make that safety assessment so they knew what they had to do to make their schools safer. They helped, when they did their study, they found out they needed to replace older security equipment and technology, expand restricted access keyway systems, and place classroom security levers on all doors, which allowed teachers to lock doors from the inside. Simple point. And you may say, oh, that's not expensive. Why do you need to spend money? It sure adds up when you really want to secure a door and you want to do it right. So if you have many, many doors, so we can help them do these things. And if they wanted to make sure they harden their facility, that's what the money is for. Now, there's a township in New Jersey. They use funds to secure perimeter and playground areas by installing security gates at elementary and intermediate schools to create a safer learning environment. The new exterior fences define school boundaries, making the school grounds safer for students. Interior gates were placed at school, providing the ability to lock off specific areas of the schools during emergencies. Now, again, it's common sense, but when these schools were built, Madam President, no one thought about this. Everything was open. It's like the Capitol. When I came here, I'm dating myself, a long time ago, you could go anywhere. No metal detectors, no fences, walk up the steps of the Capitol. We have lost a lot of that freedom. And our world is now to balance our freedom in the greatest country in the world with security. And that's what we're trying to do with this. In Minnesota, we saw grants used to conduct security assessments and institute safety training classes. In Palmer High School in Colorado, they implemented new surveillance, lockdown, and evacuation procedures. They doubled the number of doors that are operated by security guards, so it reduced the number of outside individuals gaining building entry. It makes it harder for people to get in. And it might be annoying for some parents, but I think right now people realize this is what is needed. It's this balance. In Florida, in Leon County, which is responsible for 50 schools, they had no central point of contact to coordinate communication across all school facilities. So they set up, with the funds from this program, a 24-hour emergency operations centers, which has significantly reduced emergency response times. There was one point of contact. So what we've done in this bill is not a one-size-fits-all. We don't say you have to do 10 things and here they are. We say you come up with the plan, you send it to the Department of Justice, they look at the plan, and they work with you to make it good, and if they think it's worthwhile, we will fund it 50%. In my final point, I want to list who supports I want to show you who supports school safety provisions in the bill. Fraternal Order of Police, Law Enforcement Security Industry, National Sheriffs, National Association of School Resource Officers, Campus Law Enforcement Administrators, a whole list. I would ask unanimous consent to place the list in the record.
Without objection.
And I have left out PTAs, Board Association of the NEA, and so on. We have a long list. Look, we will never be able to stand here and say we've solved every problem. You can't. But you have to be able to say, and you have to be able to know that you did everything you could to reduce these tragedies. And as I stand here, I think, what will people say who don't vote for this and their next tragedy comes? What will they say? How can they look at their kids and their grandkids and say, well, I didn't think it was right? We need to do common sense things around here, not put ideology ahead of practicality. The slaughter of innocents must stop. I'm going to support the Toomey Manchin amendment. It closes the gun show and internet loopholes. It's not the perfect background check I would write. We know that. But it's good. It's solid. It moves forward. I'm going to support Senator Leahy, his amendment, which will outlaw the abusive practice of straw purchasing and gun trafficking. I will support Senator Feinstein's important amendment on assault weapons. To ban those amendments, she has worked so hard to make it fair and just and right. And it would also take high-capacity clips off our streets. Senator Feinstein will have much more to say on assault weapons, and I will withhold my remarks on that until that debate. So clearly, we have work to do. And clearly, we all carry in our hearts stories from our states of this violence. And now we have a moment in time where we can actually act. And so I really appreciate this opportunity. And now I ask unanimous consent that the time until 6 p.m. be for debate only, and that at 6 p.m. the Senate recess subject to the call of the chair, and that when the Senate reconvenes, the majority leader be recognized.